Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I declare open the public hearing of the Standing Committee on Primary Industries inquiry into factors shaping social licence and economic development outcomes in critical minerals projects across Australia, here in Dubbo. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we meet today and pay respect to elders past and present of the Indigenous peoples all across Australia. This hearing will be audio broadcast and the transcript of proceedings will be published on the Parliament's website. And I'll now invite members of our committee to introduce themselves. And what we might do, just to keep things simple, I know Miss Ash Amber-Haberhar is joining us. So Ash, I might ask you to commence the introduction, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's Ash Amber-Haberhar, the Federal Member for Barton. I'm currently phoning in from Sydney. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. Meryl Swanson, Member for Paterson, which is broadly in the New South Wales Hunter, a couple of hours north of Sydney, but I do stretch from Maitland out to beautiful Port Stephens, and Committee Chair. Thank you.
Jamie Chaffey, Federal Member for Parks, which all of the councils are clearly part of, and Deputy Chair of the Primary Industries Committee.
Matt Burnell, Federal Member for Spence, Northern Suburbs of Adelaide.
And the committee is, of course, always terrifically assisted by our Secretariat. In this case, the Secretary is Joel Bateman, and Bill Pender also assisting with the inquiry. So, and thanks to everyone, including broadcasting, who makes it all possible. Now, I will ask you to give evidence today, but I will remind you that for the Hansard record, I'll ask you to state your full name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee. And although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise that this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament and therefore has the same standing as proceedings of the House. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. And I'll invite you to introduce yourselves in the capacity in which you come before the hearing, and then we'll get on with some opening remarks. Mr Jennings, would you like to commence, please?
Thank you, Chair. Stephen Jennings, Director of Development and Environment at Dubbo Regional Council.
Ian Greenham, General Manager of Lachlan Shire Council.
Kylie Smith, the Director of Corporate and Community Services for Cobar Shire Council.
Grant Baker, General Manager, Bland Shire Council.
And Mrs Tell, coming to us online, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, it's Annalise Teal, Director of Planning and Community Services at Parkshire Council.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And look, I'll now invite each of you to make a brief opening statement and tell us a little bit more about your areas and what's drawn you to give evidence and make submissions to the inquiry. Who'd like to commence?
From here, Chair, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Committee, for the opportunity, and great to see you in Dubbo, the centre of Western New South Wales and the centre of world happenings. But everything comes through Dubbo, or it should, as well. So, yeah, great to have you here. Good opportunity, I think, with where the world is at the moment and also what's happening in the world. We've got a lot of experience around us in our local government area and our patch around renewables. Also, I think there's some great learnings that we can bring into critical minerals and social licence building up through some of those great learnings that we've got through the renewable energy transition over the last 5 or 6 years that we've been heavily involved with as well from Dubbo and Dubbo Regional Council in that regard. Obviously, there are 44,000 people. We've got that one major critical minerals approval, which is just south of us, of course, at Toongai with ASM. It's an approval that's been in place there for a number of years now. But obviously, that project, I've been here 20 years with Dubbo Regional Council, the old Dubbo City, Dubbo Regional Council. It's a project that's been talked of for a long time, and also there's been a lot of layers built there across the community, across social licence really, and then there's a lot of people, I think, in our community that want to see that project move forward, most definitely. So, yeah, I think some great opportunity for some great learnings from, as I said, from renewables into critical minerals and how we can do this thing better than what we're currently doing, some of our learnings across renewables. But, yeah, critical minerals, obviously, we've all got phones. You know, I drive an EV. We're going to need them. We have to keep really working on these things and tapping away so I've got the best systems in place that we can. So thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Mr Jennings. Mr Greener?
Thank you. Was it Lachlan Shire Council is a fairly sparse council as far as we've got three main towns, 5 villages. The towns are of Tottenham, Condobolin and Lake Cargelligo. Total population of around 7,000 people, with just around 2,500 people living in Condo. We have only the one active mine at the moment, which is Kingston Resources operating Mineral Hill, which is a gold, silver, copper facility, but we do have one approved, one about to be approved. So Rio Tinto and Sunrise Energy Metals are both exploring a scandium deposit, and Sunrise Energy Metals have a large deposit of cobalt and nickel attached to that scandium project as well. But at this stage they're looking to just operate the scandium. Then just over our border we've got Sky Metals looking to reactivate their tin mine in Cobar, and we have quite a number of residents that travel down to Blandshire to work at the gold mine there at Lake Cow. So mining is a very, very big part of, and we've got numerous exploration leases, very mineral rich land through there, and that works with farming. What I wanted to bring to your attention is the real need for voluntary planning agreements with these mining activities, because when in our rating system in New South Wales, it's a cap system. I'm not too sure how it works in South Australia, but so in federal government, if you get a new business or a mine operating and they're paying taxes, then your tax earnings go up, whereas in New South Wales, local government is capped. So they pay far more rates than any other category in our shire, but the total cap of income is capped. So while the mining rates will go up, the farmland rates and the residential rates will respectively go down. So we never, like with new mines starting up, there's all this draw on, I suppose, on services, on housing, on roads, but these mining activities don't necessarily pay for any of those. They may pay, and they may argue that they pay quite a decent rate income to the councils, but that's offset by other incomes going down. So we don't actually benefit. There's no net benefit from mining rates versus farmland rates or residential rates.
Okay.
Because it is that cap system.
All right. Well, I think we'll interrogate that a little bit more when we get into it. Thank you for that. Mrs. Teal, coming to us virtually, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, thank you, Chair. My name's Annalise Teal, Director of Planning and Community Services at Parkshire Council. Just by way of introduction, Parks is located in regional New South Wales. It's an important strategic location, being on the Newell Highway, supported by the crossroads of the rail network, and also has the first special activation precinct in New South Wales. We have a strong history of mining, with North Parks Mine, a gold and copper mine being located in the Shire, and we have some insights into some positive community relationships that have been developed between the community and North Parks and Council over the times that we can share. We also have some important critical mineral deposits within the Shire. The economy is well supported by mining support services, and we have a population of about 15,000 people. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. You mentioned, sorry, I just could not quite hear the agreement that has been signed. What was it a special activation precinct that you said? I just missed that. Sorry.
Yeah. So the Parks Special Activation Precinct.
Right, okay.
So there's
We'll investigate that further once we get into the roundtable itself. But I just wanted to make sure that I had clearly heard what you were telling us. So thank you for that, Ms. Smith.
Thank you very much. I'm learning a lot this morning already on behalf of Cobar. I wasn't quite so aware that Dubbo was so integral. I thought we were the heart of metalliferous mining, but maybe I'm wrong. So Cobar has a very long mining history. It's a small population. We have approximately 5,000 people within the Shire and about 50,000 square kilometres. So the vast majority of our land is farmland. However, the vast majority of our wealth and employment comes from the mining sector and subsidiary industries to that. So we're very, very exposed to any changes in mining, and we're very, very grateful for the contribution that they make locally. As Mr Greenham said, though, we also suffer, obviously, as soon as there is a shift in mining from an additional demand for our services, and we're really at the pointy end of that. We're I guess undergoing a little bit of a renaissance at the moment. We've got a huge amount of mining interest. We've got some really big mining expansions, including the recent purchase by Harmony Mining, which is actually a mining company that's looking to do some really deep drilling for copper, which is absolutely fantastic. We've also got some of the older mines, again, as Mr Greenham said, that don't actually even have voluntary planning agreements. They've been around for so long and haven't made some of those changes. So as I said, we're really, really very blessed to have mining within our community, and it makes a very positive impact, but it also obviously comes with some real challenges for the council and the community to manage some of those impacts as well.
Thank you. And Mr Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bland Shire Council is at the intersection of both the Newell being northwest and the Midwestern being the east-west highways across New South Wales, which is a critical logistical location. Our two largest industries are agriculture and mainly cropping, and the gold mining that occurs in the Shire at Evolution Lake Cowal. Our population is about 5,500 to 6,000 people, of which 3,500 are in our main centre of West Wyalong. The Shire is also serviced by a couple of, I was going to say large, but I shouldn't, solar farms, and which are already connected to the grid, and two more that are either in DA stage or in construction. Our largest ratepayer is the agricultural sector, and then the mining sector. The mine generates about 350 jobs locally, and on top of that comes all of the contractors that fly in, fly out, or drive in, drive out, depending on what's occurring at the mine. We have a strong relationship with Evolution Lake Cowal. We're currently in the process of, we have out on public exhibition a voluntary planning agreement, which would be the merger of an existing VPA and a VPA for the new open pit continuation project, which is DA approved and currently under construction. We have also negotiated with them a road deed of agreement to help provide additional funding to our road network. So we're always looking for how the mine can support us, and I recognise Mr Greenham's comments with regards to ratings and the challenges that presents to local government across New South Wales. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for that note. Thank you for the opening statements. Just for clarification on the voluntary planning agreement. So you've struck a deal with the mine in relation to roads. Now, is that additional income that's sort of carved out from your rating cap? Right. So these voluntary planning agreements, in terms of income for local government organisations, they would seem to me to be pretty important.
That's correct.
They're important, but they're not millions of dollars.
No, of course. No, I understand.
Yeah. Quite often they're tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, but certainly not millions of dollars as such.
Sure. Okay. All right then. So look, thank you very much for sort of giving us an outline of your areas. Obviously, big tracts of land, often with not a lot of people, but at this point in the history of the planet, incredibly important in terms of what this inquiry is focused on, critical minerals and rare earths, but I'm also picking up on the point that mining is something that we've been doing well in your parts of the world for a number of years now, and mining services in and of themselves are valuable as well. So how we extract is just as important as what we extract, and doing it well and making sure that communities get value out of that seems to me to be one of the points that you're all really emphasising, and we heard that yesterday too, didn't we, Mr. Chaffey? So, okay. So I think what we might do is get into some lines of questioning. I might hand over to you to start, and then we can. I know we've got Miss Amber Haberhart on the line as well. So what we might do, Ash, I'll open with Jamie, and then I'll go to you, go to Matt, and then I'll circle back. But there's plenty of things to talk about, and I do note that we have media arriving at 10:30. Is that correct?
I believe 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock,
Just
excuse me.
some shooting. But
yeah, sure. So in about, so we might aim to have a break in about sort of 45 minutes. I think we'll get into questions and conversations and the round table, and then we'll have a bit of a break at about 10. So does that suit everyone? Yeah, great. All right, over to you, Deputy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I will focus on asking a question from an individual council to begin with, but then I'd be very happy if other councils would like to expand on an answer that's more specific to your council with that particular question, if that's okay. I know so Ian, for Lachlan Shire specifically, I'll start with this one, but it is relevant for many of the others as well, with the expansion of opportunity now with many critical mineral projects, and you spoke about scandium and cobalt and many others in the Lachlan Shire area. Is there a part to play or more support required from both state and Commonwealth governments to support council when it comes to the assessment process and even the negotiation, whether it be from VPA or any other support that might be required because of that volume of work that I'm sure your council would, any other normal period, would not have that increase in volume of workload, but specifically because of the nature of these critical minerals and the uniqueness of them. Is there more support that should be given or could be given from a state and Commonwealth government?
Certainly could be given. Yeah, we operate with a director of planning, a senior planner, and a junior planner. So that's our capacity. That manages our business as usual workload fairly well. But I guess it's the assessment of these projects is really goes out to a lot of state agencies, are referral authorities, and federal agencies as well. It's making sure that their state and federal agencies are complying with the required timelines to respond, because it's local government that gets the blame for any delays. I don't think our small team are quite passionate. They spend the extra hours to go through these things if they need to, but it's I guess as long as those referral agencies are all doing their part, and we don't see mines like the gold mine in the Central West near Blaney, where it goes through all those hurdles, all the local consultation. We've got a very
Are you referring to Cadia? Just to be the Cadia got
no,
sorry, Blaine. You said Blaney.
Near Blaney. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So there was a second one there.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yep.
Proposed, and it got knocked on the head.
Oh yes.
At the 11th hour. So I guess those sorts of things would be would be dangerous for us. For us, the assessment isn't the thing; it's the investment in infrastructure to support these facilities where the real input could come from, both state and federal.
In relation to the voluntary planning agreement, my understanding is, from my time in local government, that goes back some time ago now, there is no set standard or method for the negotiation of a voluntary planning agreement with a extractive company. Should there be, and is there a part for state and Commonwealth government to play with support or local government for the establishment of that?
There should be some clear guidelines. There's an unwritten guideline that you generally aim for around 1% of the development costs for the mine as a return on as part of the agreement. So for the voluntary planning agreement. So that's the basis that we've just. So Sunrise Energy Metals mine, while it's a scandium mine wholly located within Lachlan Shire Council, it borders. It will draw its water from Forbes, and that pipeline will run through both Forbes, Parks and Lachlan Shire. It will have its base in Parks Shire Council. So we together, the three councils of Parks, Forbes and Lachlan, developed the voluntary planning agreement with Sunrise Energy Metals. They already had a base one in there for a much larger mine, which I referred to, involved the cobalt and nickel mining. Now that they're drawing back to, and they had a VPA agreed on that basis, now they're drawing back to just the scandium and producing roughly 1 tonne a week of scandium-rich ore that could go out on the back of a Hilux ute, so to speak, instead of a road train. So there's much less impact on our roads. So we agreed to a revised voluntary planning agreement on that basis.
Can I just pick up something there, Deputy? I'm really interested because obviously we've been charged with looking at social licence, but also regional economic development as part of the terms of reference, and the pressure on this project is timing. Okay, in terms of there's a certain amount of pressure on us as a federal government. We've signed an agreement with the American government saying that we want to extract these rare earths and critical minerals because they are critical. Their accessibility and the timeliness of extraction is all part of this. Now, it seems to me that one of the biggest issues, and I'm not just talking about critical minerals and rare earths here, is this approvals process. And this is in no way laid at the feet of local government. I think that the state agencies also have a big say in this. And I hear it a lot in terms of red and green tape, projects being bogged down and the timeframes blowing out. And so for me, this is the big concern. If we've got time pressure, we want projects to be stood up, to be extracting, to be exporting. We're hoping to be value adding for Australians as well. How can we better do it? And this is, for me, this is really where the rubber hits the road, because you've got, with all due respect, small but often very efficient shires who are doing their best. You've said you've got 3 people effectively doing your planning, and then you get projects that come in, and then on top of that you might have a project of state significance, so then you've got other agencies, and overlaid with that is the EPBC. So it seems to me that whilst we need good regulation, when we do, for community benefit, for environmental protection, all of the reasons, there's pressure. And I'm really interested to get to tin tax from you, because you are literally on the ground, advising how can we help you to do this better? And feel free to, you know, have a crack at us as a federal agency. Feel free, you know, you don't need to be polite, you need to be honest, because it's the only way we get to shape and put forward recommendations that might have a chance of forming policy. We do need to hear the warts and all, you know, how things actually pan out. I know you've just cited the gold mine exercise there that didn't happen. Reese's, yes, that's it. So it's really important that we do hear from you about your challenges, and I don't want you to sort of sit here today and leave this room and say, oh, well, you know, we sort of gave them the polite version, but that's not really how it happens on the ground. So I do want to give you the freedom of being truthful and open about it, because that's the only way. You are our eyes and ears, and it's the only way we can. I'm just not here for make busy work. No. You know, this committee has been charged with looking at social licence, looking at economic development in regional areas from these rare and precious things, and we've got to try and make the most of it. So this is a great chance. So I don't want you to leave here today thinking, oh, well, that was all very polite, but they didn't really hear what's going on. So, you know, I give that to you as an open-ended commitment that this is a genuine exercise. We want to make it worth your time and worth our time as well. So don't be afraid to give it to us straight.
Okay, very good. Well, Sunrise Energy Metals has its mining approval, has done for around nearly 10 years now. I think it was 2017 that they had the approval for cobalt, nickel and scandium even back then. So they don't have any regulatory hurdles to jump over now. They've got a financial investment decision that's due towards the end of June, beginning of July, and then they'll start their detailed design and construction. So I believe they've even started some of that detailed design already in preparation for what they believe will be a yes. So we've put our voluntary planning agreement in place with them. Rio Tinto's Burra project, they're about to lodge their DA. I think they tried to lodge it through the portal but didn't have all the information ready in their first application, but they're a very well-resourced company, so I don't see any problems with them getting the information that's needed.
So that's through your portal, your local, your Shire
planning
portal?
Well, it's a statewide
It's on the state portal. Oh, yeah, okay. That's, yeah.
Yep. And then it gets sent out to the referral authorities. So once all that information is in hand, I don't see any problem with Rio Tinto being able to resource their approval process. What we have in Lachlan Shire Council is just over 4,000 kilometres of road network. Many of that is gravel roads, and with the recent rain that we've had over the last couple of days, our gravel roads are closed to any vehicle over 3 tonne. So that stops the operation of Kingston, the existing mine that Kingston Resources operate at Mineral Hill, because there's a gravel road access in there. What we'd like to see is state and federal government investing back into the regional areas where these large incomes are being derived for the nation, so that we can upgrade some of these roads so that they are all-weather access, so that they can operate 24/7 in all weather. So that would be my big push, is investment back in infrastructure.
Yeah, you asked that. Oh, actually, Ash, are you there? Are you ready to go, or shall I go back to Jamie?
Yeah, if Jamie wants to go, that's fine.
Right, Jamie's got a supplementary, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
So just to tease that out a little bit further, if I can, currently from the Commonwealth, there's funding, recurrent funding that comes. It's non-competitive through R2R. And you're suggesting, because of the mining activity, I mean, R2R is equal across all 537 councils, all get that on an annual basis. But you're saying because of the fact that you've got the affectation of mining in yours, well, all 4 councils, or through most regional communities in the Parks electorate have that, that there should be something akin to what the state used to have, which was royalties for regions, where there was an investment from that royalty or tax generation from the activity that's actually invested back into the community. And I guess my question is, not only should that be reinstated, should there be something very similar to that created from the Commonwealth to those communities?
Well, thank you, Jamie, for your question. There's probably two parts, one being the state one. So just to correct it in everyone's mind, we had a resources for regions operating in New South Wales, which was funded out of the Poles and Wise commercialisation, privatisation.
Was that resources or royalties?
That was resources for regions.
Right, because all the
West Australia had a royalties for region,
right, okay,
which was true royalties from mining going back into the regions. New South Wales has never had that. New South Wales should have something like that, and the mining and energy related councils are pushing the state government to reintroduce something similar to the WA model, where there was a royalties for region. Back to the federal government, yes, we have the specific road funding, roads to recovery. But what we also have is the federal assistance grant, and going back a couple of decades, that was 1% of the federal government's taxation income was split back out to local government. It's now less than half of that, so it's sitting around 0.48% of that tax revenue being distributed back to local government. That should be reinstated to the full 1% of taxation revenue, federal taxation revenue. And then further to that, New South Wales, where most of the GST is collected, currently doesn't get its fair share back. So, and that's, like, historically you could understand why states such as South Australia and West Australia got a bigger portion of the GST. But we look at this last financial year, and Victoria are going to get 120% of their GST. So that's a wealthy state with a decent population that are getting treated a lot better than New South Wales. And New South Wales are seeing their portion of the GST actually declining. So I think when the Minns government came in, it was sitting at about 0.92%. I think it's sitting at 0.88% now.
So just to tease that out a little, so you're saying roads to recovery and
federal assistance grant, because the federal assistance grant has a roads component as well.
The financial assistance grants, if it went back to 1%, you think that, I mean, both of those programs go equal with the formula that's in both those acts, goes equally to all councils? You don't think the councils that are affected by mining, and obviously that's not all councils, should be treated differently with a royalty type component from the Commonwealth as well? And not only interested in your response, but all the councils.
I think so, yes.
You think
particularly
there should,
for infrastructure,
or there's not enough? You think that there should be or shouldn't be?
There should be.
I think there should be, and I think the biggest challenge is that we're dealing with really, really large infrastructure burdens. We have had projects and processes across the last 20 years that have only added to that infrastructure burden, and also some of our community's expectations. Even when we go back to voluntary planning agreements, they're usually based on extraction or the development under the microscope at the time. So we're looking at tonnage over a specific section of road without even looking at some of those cumulative impacts right across the council area. Even some of those decisions to increase things like the weights on loads and stuff recently in response to the fuel crisis don't really have any built-in understanding of what that does to local and state road networks, trying to manage that and the long-term cumulative effects of that either. even down to social licence and the impact of mining. We've got people sleeping in tents doing evaluations for new mining camps in the caravan park because we don't have any accommodation. People are simply not prepared to make the investment, so the costs are higher living in rural, remote and particularly mining communities. We face in Cobar about a 30% markup on everything that we do. So I think even going back to roads to recovery, I really don't think that that's factored in. Now, again, we constantly struggle to come up with a cost-benefit ratio that enables us to participate in a lot of funding models that are set. So we continue to fall further behind, even in terms of larger infrastructure supported more so by the states, but things like the issues we have getting water. The electricity network is still right across New South Wales, not just in Cobar, has not been built up to the level that it needs to be to support a lot of the mining. So we've talked a little bit this morning about planning. I appreciate there's planning and approval pathways, and the EIS for some of these mines could take the average person 6 months to get through before you get started without making a response. By the same token, even if they get through all the planning approvals, we haven't actually got the infrastructure, water, electricity, housing, to even develop some of these mines to the levels that we need.
Thank you, and that's the sort of evidence we need, Ms Smith, to be frank with you. You know, these are the challenges that we are facing. So.
Unfortunately, Madam Chair, it hasn't changed since Tony Windsor's day, I don't think. I think there's that many reports out there that say the same thing, and unfortunately we just haven't made any real inroads. And there are a lot of reasons for that as well, and we're on the cusp of the renewals. We're looking at some renewals in the southern part of our council area as well, and we're struggling to support just the mining interests at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Ash, would you like to pick up a line of questioning, please?
Not at this point, Chair, because the contributions that I just heard now addresses the question that I had. So
thank you.
Point,
okay.
Chair, thank you.
No problem. Matt, can I come to you, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for providing evidence today. I'm keen to get all of your thoughts, because it comes up in the submissions that we have received and in general discussion around social licence. And I go to Park Shire's submission where you talked about early and meaningful community engagement around the structure for good social licence. I'm interested to tease that out a little bit and just get a better understanding of what you would like to see around the development of a social licence within your communities that can be applied more broadly across the country as we try and explore the opportunities within the critical minerals sector.
Yep, thank you for your question. I think in terms of early and meaningful community engagement, something that's worked well here in Parks, well, it's an existing mine, the North Parks mine. They have a community consultative committee. They engage regularly with the community. They provide sorry, I'm just getting a bit of echo on the call. They provide lots of support to local community groups, and they also have a program where their employees have community service leave, so 2 to 3 days annually, where they participate in community facilities or help volunteer groups or support a local community building some of their infrastructure. So there's some of the things that are working well here in Parks. I guess in terms of community engagement as well, it's that benefit sharing and understanding in the local community through engagement with the groups about what the community needs and what the community wants to see enhanced in the town.
Have you got examples where it hasn't worked well?
No, sorry, I'd have to come back to you on that. I don't have any examples at this stage.
Maybe that's an indication that your consultation process works extremely well. Does anybody else want to contribute to that?
I might just jump in through you, Madam Chair. For our patch, and obviously as I said in my opening statement there, 27 renewables projects, we've got lots of engagement, good, bad and ugly. For us, And what we really encourage, and what I would encourage in respect to critical minerals as well, is with these projects, they take a long time to build up the layers, so they don't happen overnight. And where we've found to have some better examples of engagement and buying is where there is that community presence, that permanent community presence. So if you have fly-in, fly-out proponents, that community presence is not there, and the relationships don't get struck, they don't get forged, and they're not meaningful and long-lasting. So that definitely is one of the very strong keys that we try and work on with proponents across renewables, critical minerals, whatever. Build up the layers, because if they're not there, that's when the social licence drops. You don't have that strong focus, and it just turns into a fight, which we don't want to happen across anything, of course. The other thing as well, of course, with benefit sharing, and in council submission there, I speak on the fact of what I think the New South Wales government probably has done okay in just with the energy transition is having that very set framework around what planning agreements mean in terms of funding. So, there's no, like a small council can't get picked off for a smaller price or any of that sort of thing as well. And one of the strong things that we very much focus on is trying to say, well, okay, with a proponent, your conditions of development consent are your costs of doing business, they're your primary impacts of a project, whether it's critical minerals, mine, whatever. Then really the planning agreement is for the secondary impacts of a development. So this is where a host community has had to, put up with a bit more traffic on roads that they don't ordinarily see. It's where there's more things going on, and just that change in their local area and environment as well. So really to try and make sure that there's that very clear link between primary and secondary impacts, because otherwise I have seen it, and I've had proponents try and pick me off that way as well, where they'll go, oh, hang on, no, we'll stick that in the VPA. No, sorry, that's in your conditions of approval. This is for the community, and this is what they need as well to see that. Another thing that we're working on as well behind the scenes for the last 12 months or so, with a lot of projects happening in our area, renewables projects, but same, so to speak, we've got a community committee in place. So there is the CCC that Annalise spoke of as well, like the CCC framework, but we've also got an overarching community committee that council manages. So this has representation from across our local government area and building as all the time. So it's about trying to share knowledge and issues and concerns that are happening, plus also building up our strategic frameworks for how we deal with benefit sharing from planning agreements as well. So the community has a say, of course, in what happens with those funds. So whether they're renewables, critical minerals, whatever, there's no reason why that model can't work and why we've invested so much in it.
So just for clarity, so that's using the renewable energy benefit framework that you talked about in your submission?
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. So any other contributions on that?
If I may, Madam Chair, just to further from Mrs Teal's comments, the North Parks mine is now owned by the same company that owns the Lake Cowal operation, and there's a community consultative committee for the Lake Cowal operation as well, which is also represented by, on that committee is also Forbes and Lachlan Shires as adjoining council areas. That has a strong engagement with community, and the Lake Cowal operation also has good community support networks in West Wollongong and the Bland Shire. And if we were to lose that, that would be very detrimental to the Shire, whether it be simple sponsorships for sporting clubs, and I think they probably sponsor every sporting club there is in the Shire, to providing new air conditioning systems to community halls. Those sorts of things, they're absolutely critical for, and I know the Resources for, get the right one, the Resources for Regions Fund was a very strong way where I was previously employed to invest that money back into the likes of community halls and air conditioning systems and upgrades, because those sorts of community assets had been let go over the previous decades. So they're very important investments back into our communities and that supporting that social licence.
Thank you. Sorry, do you mind if I keep going? Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on, I think it was something you said, Mr Jennings, around the fly-in, fly-out and drive-in, drive-out portions of the workforce, and I assume that this might be something that covers across all of the shires and councils represented here today, but is there enough investment in local employment, skills development and opportunity pathways for people living in your communities, and do we need to do better in that regard, provide more support? What's your take on that?
Through you, Madam Chair, no. Just in my submission there as well, I spoke of the Renewable Energy Awareness Career Training Centre that Council's basically working on, and also that's with 11.25 million from the state government. The reason why that we took that heavy lifting upon ourselves is to try and get that happening sooner rather than later, because it's hard to bring all of those parties together. Like TAFE aren't ordinarily the quickest in doing things. I'll be very diplomatic, of course, but just trying to bring those things together quicker than what would ordinarily be the case. And for us, for that career training centre, what it was about, so like somewhere like Wellington, a different town to Dubbo, higher social disadvantage, the median house price is half what it is at Dubbo. We wanted to make sure that that kid in Year 6 at Wellington Primary can have a good job in the energy transition. So that was why, and some of the fundamentals as to why the council went in that direction as well. So in terms of skill development across all of these different aspects that we have, critical minerals and the like as well, of course there is very well paying jobs in critical minerals. But what we want to make sure is that a kid from Cobar can get that well-paying job, not just that job fixing a fence. We want to aim high, plus also how do we put those frameworks in place across federal, state and local government as well. And without local government have to do the heavy lifting as we're trying to do with the REACT Centre at this level.
Can I ask, so when you strike your agreements, is there local content quotas within those agreements or not?
Generally not.
Any agreements? No.
Right.
There'd be voluntary ones that they enter into. Sometimes in their DAs, there are conditions of consent for a certain amount of local content, but not always.
And so where there are conditions around local content, do they provide the educational pathway for the local content if it's not available within a community, or is that up to the individual?
Can I just cut in there, Matt? I think it's worthwhile qualifying where we're talking about local employment versus
Correct.
local content. So content sort of speaks to procurement and buying things locally as opposed to local employment. I just want to clarify that. Please proceed.
There is an assumption that there is a workforce. So again, at the moment, there is zero, in my opinion, might not be registered unemployment in Cobar. I cannot get a trainee for the front counter. I cannot get a staff member, whether they're skilled or otherwise there. I've got, if you look on our social media general notice board, there are more people looking to come to Cobar than we can accommodate. Even the industries that we're short on, particularly one of my favourites is aged care. We've had to enter into our own labour force agreement to actually obviously import people with those skills. They're not available in Australia. We've got a current vacancy for our childcare service for an educator. We cannot find anybody across the country with the skills despite offering 20 to 30% more, including housing. So when we go to even what we're actually providing, I can't employ somebody unless I've got accommodation for them. Even at that premium lucky to even find them to offer those services. So I'm not saying that's not a different problem elsewhere, but encouraging people to live regionally, which is why we're so focused on livability and those types of things of the general community. All of those pieces actually really, really help us. But until such time as we've got the accommodation, we can't attract new people into our town, and we're at capacity with the people that we currently have.
Mr Chaffey, I think, has a supplementary
Yeah,
question.
thank you. I appreciate the response. The two main areas that this committee is focused on is social licence, which critical minerals in mind, but social licence, but also regional development. So to pick up, Ms Smith, on your comments then, local government does have some funding sources, recurrent, and some that are competitive grant funding opportunities at state and federal level, and you have your rate base and your VPAs and other funding streams. What I consistently hear from local government is there's not enough funding available to deliver the services that you're requested or expected to deliver for your community already. When it comes to regional development, how do you that barrier that you all have about that growth to bring that population in, how do you suggest we address that, and is there a part to play from the Commonwealth in addressing it?
I think there is a part to play from the Commonwealth. It's just which piece you'd actually like to pick up, I suppose, is
regional development.
And that's where I'm sort of going in terms of regional development, that if there are barriers to people developing and there's not the rate of return, people won't develop. If I can get a rate of return by sending all my builders to Yamba and building houses on the coast, why on earth would I bother to go to Cobar and try and travel those enormous distances trying to attract staff out there when there is no housing? I've had people having to stay in Nyngan just to undertake my existing works that we're doing on the Lillian Brady Village. That's a 130-kilometre commute for tradies, just so that they can find accommodation to undertake that. And we go back to even the costs of development. So we have, obviously we're successful in grant funding from the Commonwealth in particular. Even with that, the cost of doing it, we do a quantity survey, which we did 18 months ago on a particular project. The quantity survey came back at about 1.4, 1.5 million. I'm just in the process of trying to negotiate a tender. The responses, I had one response, and the tender itself came out at 3.2. So again, I go back within 12 to 18 months, that's the cost differential from what we're actually programmed to what we deliver, so now we've got to go back and rejig that. So going back to the barriers, it shifts very, very quickly. Our processes are fairly slow in terms of assessment, and the rate of return is not really there for a lot of people to participate.
So to expand on that, we need critical minerals, we've got the resource, we've got companies that are very keen to come out and to extract that resource. Is it the ratepayer's responsibility to pay more rates to have all of this need
that's
for regional development of the services? Okay. So I'll open this to all councils. Then whose responsibility is it, and what work can this committee do through your advice on addressing the critical shortage in regional development so that we do have the workforce, not just for the extractive industries, but hopefully for the downstream processing, and then after life of mine, how do we keep those people?
Mr Deputy Chair, using some examples from the Blandshire recently and acknowledging the state government's funding of the local government training scheme, I can't even remember what it's called now, we were successful in getting a number of traineeships for our organisation, and we've been through the process of recruitment. At the same time, we were also recruiting some planning staff. We had a similar scale of planning to Mr Greenham's Lachlan Shire with about 3. One of those planning staff who came on board less than 3 months ago is already moving to the mine. The great story about that person when they came on board was that they were actually following their partner, who was relocating from the coast to one of our smaller villages as the local police officer, which was fantastic. That person is staying in that role, but we've lost the partner who's moving to the mine because of the amount of money they can pay. Housing's a big thing for us. We have a DA approved 49 lot residential subdivision ready to go. The private developer is not progressing with that at this point in time. We're not sure what the status is on that. And that is a big challenge for our community in West Wyalong. In the employment space, I use the example of Armstrong Toyota, who couldn't find mechanics a couple of years ago. So they've actually worked through a visa sponsorship program. I couldn't tell you how many they have on board, but they have a number, all from the Philippines, and continuing to maintain a strong Toyota presence in Blanchard, which is really important.
I think I was just going to say on the end of that, though, I think it's getting a good understanding of the scope of the issue. Again, things just continually become underfunded and tied up where we can't get to a delivery stage. And that's a very common thing that happens for us. So we can even take some larger leaps and get our own visa programs and manage those and those types of things. But there's a really big investment, and we're talking millions. Like, I think we've got one subdivision that we'd actually like to have developed. We've put in 4 different grants for that. It's $13 million just for the infrastructure. That's without a house being built. Again, the types of grant funding that's coming up is 5, 7, 8. It's not even enough to get the infrastructure in there to then have a developer to come and build a house. So I think if we're going to get serious about a timeline and what we want to see come out of the regions, we really need to put in some money, and a significant sum fairly quickly, recognising what that does look like, because otherwise we'll just continue to churn through the money and get no development outcome or rate of return on it at all.
Can I just add just on enabling infrastructure? There has been some grants made available through the New South Wales State Government for enabling infrastructure in the years gone by, but they have been targeted for LGAs that are deemed to have high population projections based on the population projections issued by the state. So that's a bit of an issue for us, because whilst we're sort of planning for growth with the special activation precinct, similar to the stories at Bland and Cobar, we've got land that's been zoned and ready to subdivide, but it's just the enabling infrastructure costs that are prohibitive to both private developers and councils to activate.
Please, Mr. Baker. Yes.
To further on that, a great example that was shared by Mrs. Teal, but in the Blanchard, was we had previously submitted an application to the state government under the Growing Regional Economies Fund, and we're waiting on the outcome of the first phase of that, which was to help provide enabling infrastructure, electricity, sewer, water, road upgrades and so forth, to support the growth of the urban fringe, if you like, of West Wyalong. And unfortunately, change of government, change of outlook on what they were planning to do, that funding was lost. And that was going to be a prime opportunity for us to invest back into the infrastructure in the Shire.
Okay. I know that the Housing Minister in recent weeks has made an announcement about what she has described as the last mile of infrastructure and civil engineering and capital works. So it will be interesting to see how that is shared with shires like yours. But we do take the point that it can't, I think Mrs. Teal just made the point that it can't just go to areas where there are larger populations, and it also does need, from the scope of this inquiry, it needs to go to areas where we're doing the mining and where we do need to enable many things to allow that to happen. And I'm picking up today, whilst roads are a huge concern over long distances, obviously gravel roads pose their own challenges continually with weather. It's not just roads, it's housing, it's people, doing the caring for our elderly Australians, it's caring for our younger Australians, it's all the things that go into making communities livable, and also, allowing the extraction of these critical minerals and rare earths to actually happen. Because if you can't attract people to the areas, then it's very difficult to stand projects up and have communities function, unless you go for the FIFO model, which we really hope that we can keep the benefit in regional and rural Australia rather than going for those models, because we've seen that, you know, they come with their issues too.
Through you, Madam Chair, that the FIFO and the drive-in, drive-out models still have an enormous drain on community resources
Indeed.
and expectations. Your FIFO workers aren't included in your census data. And we've still got people who need to go to the doctor, who still might be there for a week on, week off, bring their children, need childcare. They still, you know, have a couple of days off for recreation. They're still consuming our assets. So, you know, and there's still no funding stream to be able to manage that either.
Well, maybe you've just picked up on a really good point there, Ms Smith, and that is, do we need to make a change to the census so that, you know, these people are included in some measure? I mean, I suppose on census night where they're residing, if it happens to be their week on and they're you know, at the mine, but maybe that is something that we do need to be looking at in terms of actual, you know, where people are and you know. So.
Picking up on Mrs Teal's comment though previously as well, is that understanding we've got population growth forecasts that are in the negative, and yet we've got not a housing or an accommodation to offer. So again, we've one, we can't grow up to, we can't even accommodate those people who want to come, and yet our projections are in reverse, which is what essentially the state's planning for us. So whether we agree, it's not that we just disagree for the sake of funding. We've got evidence on the ground that we can't support what we've got, and yet the forecast is yeah, as I said, minimal.
In Lachlan Shire Council, if I may, we've got a company there that provides specialist drilling equipment to the mining industry. They have their all their specialised manufacturing is done in Condobolin. Because of the lack of I suppose industrial land and around there, they then ship those or transport those components on rail into Western Sydney, where they lease another facility, or they're then assembled in Sydney, painted in Sydney, sent back to Condobolin for by rail for QA purposes, and then sent everywhere from South Australia to Western Australia, out to Canada from Condobolin.
So can you just, sorry, I just want to get this clear in my head, Mr Graham. So you've got, did you say because they can't get land, they're not?
Land, yeah. So they want to develop. They're also bringing in, similar to other councils, they're bringing in a workforce from the Philippines.
Yes.
I understand the federal government have listed the Philippines now as like an area of concern for bringing in workers, but like they're trained in, because they're an American base, they're trained in all of our systems. So for manufacturing, they come, even if they can't speak English, they can read a plan from day one. So they understand what we're doing. Most of them do speak English as well, by the way, very well. And so we've got a big Filipino community in Condobolin. But yeah, and their concern is also around housing as well, because as the mining takes up housing, there's not housing for their staff.
Presumably permanent residents who are all paying
Permanent
taxes.
residents,
Who are
all paying taxes.
Yes.
They're all, yeah, and a lot of them become naturalised through the citizenship process that we run twice a year, and we're generally running around about 30 plus citizens at each ceremony, so in excess of 60. Yet because when we go for a state government grant or a federal government grant, we're forced to use the Department of Planning's projection figures for population, and they're either stable or negative, and so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We've got these manufacturers and employers that want to bring people in, that want to expand their processes, but they're simply, when we go to try and get funding for the enabling infrastructure, it's just, we just don't stack up against someone that's on the coast.
So
because they've got a growing population.
Can I ask a flesh that out a little, Madam Chair.
Please, and just before you do that, Deputy, I'll just for your awareness, the media are joining us and they're going to be taking some broader vision of the hearing. Is everyone comfortable with that? Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Please continue.
So to that point, we're talking about the critical need for our communities that are having the impact of mining, critical minerals or others, and I would say benefit as well.
There's definitely benefit there.
And we want that regional development. We want our communities to see as much benefit as we possibly can. We've talked about grant funding. I would love to hear your opinion on contestable versus non-contestable grant funding and your experience in the past. You've touched on it a little there, but what I've heard from many smaller councils is because of the contestable grant funding, opportunity to actually be successful is quite low, and a requirement of a 50-50 co-contribution the councils simply don't have. So that I'd love to know your experience there, and then the follow-on question from that is, if there was to be a funding stream allocated to communities who will have that affectation of critical mineral projects, should it just be isolated to those councils, not more broadly to the local government industry, and what would that design, or what should that design look like? So should it be non-contestable, and should it only be available to those councils that are...
Can I jump in, Deputy Chair, and through you, Madam Chair? I think that's just from, I understand what you're saying in the question. I think the context where it could aim better, because what I'm cognizant of is the fact of, we want to ensure proponents are held to account through the planning system for what they need to do as well. So that's also making sure that councils have the capability and capacity, plus also, to make sure that conditions are right in approvals, to make sure they do things as well they have to do and be held to account. I think that for mine and in the Dubbo context, what would potentially work, obviously, and probably my colleague at Parks would have the same view, around the enabling infrastructure, and then also particularly aimed at housing, of course, because what we find with housing, with projects, of course, that proponents are ordinarily not really keen. They're not housing providers. That's the first thing I'll tell you. So they're not ordinarily keen to do their own project or the like, or to invest a lot in housing things. So I think that's something that was aimed at enabling infrastructure for housing, to enable councils like us all here in the room to be able to build up the layers so we can get proponents to make sure they invest in housing projects. So we have a project at Wellington that's a private developer. It's going to be a 5-year temporary workers accommodation project, and then up to 5 years, buildings leave, there's some enabling infrastructure left. So anything that helps to fill in the gap in terms of enabling infrastructure, I think for us all, would help the picture for sure. I think around experience, of course, with housing or with grant projects, we had a couple of cracks at the Regional Precincts and Partnerships program the last couple of years, which we weren't successful for. One was for about $20 million in enabling infrastructure for the Northwest Precinct, which is 1.5 kilometres from where we're sitting, just across the river as well. So it's 15,000 people. It's one of our key growth areas for Dubbo, but we're unsuccessful with that one. But I think that if it can build up the layers across enabling infrastructure for housing, it would definitely help.
Can I just pick up on this thinking? So it seems to me, just also picking up on Ms Smith's contribution, that when you're applying for grants or assistance, there are set parameters that you have to use. So you're using the census figures, you're using your state growth projections, and they're locked in. So in terms of recommendations from this committee on this topic for the report, Something in my mind is shaping in relation to areas that are impacted by mining, that have a contribution to make in terms of rare earths and critical minerals, need to be given some sort of weighting. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Some sort of additional consideration in these application processes, so we can clearly say, look, this is not just a project that has benefit across the country or whatever. This is they're almost akin to projects of state significance. They're projects of national strategic significance. If I can use that as just a first pass language, I'm not saying that'll make the final, report, but in my mind, this is what's shaping. We actually need to be now operating at a level where we say, in some of these areas, these projects are actual projects of national and strategic significance. So they do need to be given weighting, consideration, acceleration. I know that's a dynamic, sort of strange, triggering word for a lot of local government. But do you get where my thinking's going on this? Like, we actually do need to be saying, hang on a minute, if we want to drive these projects and we want to drive these communities, and that's not just speaking to last mile infrastructure for things like sewerage and housing, and it's talking about workforce, it's talking about all of the things that go into making the areas viable, attracting people, and then standing up projects.
Going back to Mr Chaffee's comment, I think that's the difficult thing, and I was thinking about this even in the Dubbo context, is that everybody faces different challenges. So over the course of their history, people have, responded to community needs in their own way and delivered goods and services to the community, which I personally believe that it shouldn't be contestable. I think you should actually have a basis of what you'd like to see delivered in those communities in some sort of satisfaction metric as opposed to necessarily an application metric on the other end. The only one that I can think of that was somewhat similar, and unfortunately just the nature of government and public funds that was difficult, was actually the drought funding. So where there was an allocation to each of those areas of X amount of dollars, and those communities actually participated in, whether it was water infrastructure, those kind of things, and making some of those decisions around that. Now, I appreciate that wasn't necessarily super well received after the audit of it at the end, but that's the difficulty we've got, that what we want to see, that the processes that we want to put in place really hamper some of the outcomes that we've actually got. So no, I don't think it should be contestable if you want to achieve a specific outcome. The other challenge for us too is whether or not we can actually support any more infrastructure. So when we're talking about public money and we are talking about subdivisions and the like, for us one of those big considerations is trying to move those on privately as fast as we can. So being the enabler, not the holder. We already own $500 million worth of infrastructure that, quite frankly, my financial accounts are struggling to hold. So again, the last thing I want is another new thing that's going to cost me a fortune, that's going to demonstrate on my long-term financial plan that I'm not sustainable because I'm not funding depreciation. So that's one of the difficulties that I face. We do want the growth, happy to support it however we can. That transition is very, very, very important for us, taking on board too that, miners are quite right, they want their staff to be able to access a private housing market or a private provider, not necessarily even a public provider. So that's still a challenge, and how we move that very quickly, I think.
And respectfully to my colleague from Dubbo, towns like, or cities like Dubbo and Orange, in the regions that have a population over 40,000 people, have private developers that step in and do a lot of this development. There is no private developer at Cobar, there is no private developer at Lachlan that will build a subdivision. All of that work gets done by the councils. So
You're it.
We're it, and probably even with grant at land. The land development is probably done by the councils.
And the federal government is really the only tier of government in our system that is actually able to benefit the individual through specific programs, first home buyers, those types of things, to actually encourage a depth in the market that we just can't.
So where the critical minerals are located in populations under 10,000, like local government populations under 10,000, then there's a real need for support for that infrastructure.
Not just housing.
Not just housing.
Not just housing, but the depth of the market, businesses, we're talking about economic development, we're talking about some of those challenges for land purchase and the like.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
So I'm hand over to Ms. Steele.
Thank you. I was just going to add, just to answer, provide a bit more commentary to Mr. Chaffee's question just around the grant funding. I think a lot of councils, they're fairly without royalties for regions, resources for regions, and the federal assistance grants being quite heavily reduced. Councils are under a lot of financial pressure. So, speaking from Parks experience at the moment, if there's grants that become available that require a 50% co-contribution, we just don't have the spare funds in most situations to allocate towards those opportunities.
Yes, no, thank you, Ms. Steele. Mr. Baker, did you want to
Thank you, Madam Chair.
give us your thoughts?
Further, I'll pick up on Mrs. Steele's comment there. Look, we're probably slightly different with regards to that co-contribution. At this point in time, we do have the ability to some extent to co-contribute to grants. The resources for regions, which was originally contestable and became allocated based on my previous experience, and I think there was 3 or 4 of the later rounds, probably 7, 8 and 9 of that program which were allocated, and that provided huge benefits to our communities. Our council, through the mining and energy related councils, still discusses that in that forum with regards to alternatives to resources for regions. We need that allocated funding, but we have to be mindful, as Ms. Smith talked about, the operational or the ongoing costs of those things. That depreciation, our finance people hate it. I know in New South Wales Government, the Auditor General is talking about how we better look at depreciation. That's an important thing, and is hopefully a bit of a shining light on an alternative way of thinking with regards to how depreciation impacts our finances. The housing piece, again, Evolution Cal would prefer to have its staff living in town. One of their biggest risks, or the biggest risk, and I know, speaking from experience from when I used to be associated with the Cadia operation, their biggest risk is moving staff to and from site. During a development phase of a mine, I've seen people coming back from a shift. There'll be 3 of them in a Land Cruiser, 2 of them asleep. They've had a 45-minute drive. That's a huge risk, and we know the flow-on impact from fatalities and serious injuries on our road networks. The figure I think today is from the New South Wales Centre of Road Safety is $3.5 million cost to the community. And sorry to put it in such raw terms, for each fatality, let alone every serious injury, and so those costs to our health system and so forth.
No, that's something that, as a member from the Hunter region, I'm acutely aware of. People from the city talk to me about carpooling, and I say, well, coal miners have been carpooling for about 100 years. That's just what you do. The people that you're on the shift with, you carpool, and one drives and the others sleep, because they're often driving I've got people that are driving up to an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then working 12 hours on top of that, so that makes for, a very long day. So that, and that safety issue is something that we all should be very, very much aware of, and where you're from, you're dealing with unsealed roads, and conditions change, very difficult. So 45 minutes on gravel road is probably akin to an hour and a half on a sealed road. You've got the concentration that's required, so that's not lost on the committee at all. Look, we've worked through our break. Sorry, I didn't suspend for a break, but. So I will suspend shortly, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity if there were any other last points that you wanted to make, anything that we may have not sort of gone to, as I said earlier in the morning, you know, I don't want you to leave here today sort of with the thought we didn't make our point, we weren't given the opportunity to make our point. Is there something we haven't touched on that you think, gee, they didn't ask us about that? I want you to leave here today feeling as though you've exhausted your lines of expertise, and if we haven't asked you something that we should have, please tell us. And if there's something that in this inquiry you want us to think about that we haven't raised, and again, I thank you for your advice and your expertise and your submissions and your time, and it is an important thing. And look, I do want to emphasise that I know there are a million reports rattling around over the years on regional development, on, you know, how we maximise growth in regional areas. I've sat on a couple of inquiries myself over 10 years. And this is another one, but we want to come through with some recommendations that, you know, hopefully can be used and will make a difference, because I see this as a pretty rare opportunity. And I know the Minister, in standing up this inquiry, really is taking it very seriously. So again, if you have any closing thoughts for us, I'd invite you to make them.
If I may, Madam Chair, to pick up on your comment or your I'll call it title with regards to national or international significance, critical minerals is obviously a key part of that, and that comes out of our regions, as does the food that we eat, the grains and the fibres. And I think there is a real need for the recognition of what the regions deliver for the nation. And that became very obvious, or has, in the last 5 years with the two situations of COVID and I'll call it the recent but still ongoing fuel crisis. The need to improve or grow what we do onshore rather than offshoring. And I use Mr. Greenham's example, whilst it's not offshore, the movement of materials or product from Condobolin to Sydney and then back again is just so inefficient. We need to find more efficient ways of processing or refining or whatever it may be, and be doing those regionally. I note the New South Wales government recently, it has a part of its renewable work or its fuel efficiency work has identified the need for sustainable aviation fuel, and its program identifies key pilot locations in regional New South Wales. So regional New South Wales is such a powerhouse for what goes on in the country, as are the other regions, the other states. That needs to be recognised at a high level of government. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we're very happy to make that contribution as well. Going back, I think there are a lot of benefits locally and nationally and internationally from what we're able to offer. I think for us, understanding the sensitivity of our regions and some of those broader policy impacts we haven't talked about today, particularly on economic development, the purchase of national parks within our region and the impact that has on other developers, their ability to get stock, to afford freight, to manage neighbours, pests, those types of things. That's been really topical for our area in terms of meat and fibre in particular. So they have a real impact on the local community then when you add on that demand. And I think if there's one thing that I'm really interested in is the depth, again, of what we're actually trying to achieve in the impacts. So right the way from the individual apprentice to those larger regional infrastructure of a lack of electricity, a lack of water, those types of things to encourage growth. So I think that's the challenge, to look at it through all of those lenses.
Thank you.
One other funding mechanism that I didn't mention before was the National Water Grid, and water is one of these biggest enablers of development, whether it's industrial, mining or agriculture, and is critical. So the last round of New South Wales applications still hasn't been assessed by the federal government, and hence so that needs to be assessed. It needs to be there needs to be ongoing funding in this space from the federal government, and because that assessment hasn't taken place, the state isn't accepting any future applications through that National Water Grid. So the National Water Grid we can't actually apply for directly. We have to apply for indirectly through the state. The state's closed applications. It won't take any more applications. So where we need funding for critical water infrastructure, it's just not happening.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's on hold.
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to thank the committee for the opportunity to come today. Excuse me, most definitely. One thing I'll definitely stress is that the success of building a foundational system for critical minerals across all of these issues we've discussed today is going to depend on the relationship between the federal and state governments. Of course, obviously where the rubber hits the road a lot for us in New South Wales is through state significant development in the New South Wales planning system. So if there's not a robust relationship there, it's foundational and fundamental.
Thank you. Ms Teal, did you want to make any concluding remarks?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to again thank you for the opportunity for coming today. Just a couple of closing remarks from us is I think it's really important that, you know, development of critical minerals out in the regions, there's some sort of mechanism to ensure that communities are supported and we support the livability in these regions. So whether it's not just through housing and enabling infrastructure, but some of the nice to have things that communities really value to help us attract workforces and make them communities that people want to live in. I think it's also important that future industries have a strong program of supporting trainees and apprenticeships to allow young people in the regions to get good jobs and be able to stay in the region and stay in their hometown while still pursuing a good career. I think the New South Wales Planning Benefit Sharing Guidelines that were developed in late 2024 for large-scale renewable projects have been really helpful for local governments in assisting in and guiding through negotiating VPAs, and if some sort of guideline could also be put in place for critical mineral developments, that would be positive. And just finally, I guess something that could be considered is just looking at different planning pathways. Currently, a critical mineral project in New South Wales would be subject to a state significant development process. An example in parks is the Park Special Activation Precinct, where they've introduced an alternate planning framework which provides precinct-wide studies and a streamlined sort of process that allows proponents a bit more certainty in their investment decision and pathway to, I guess, commence works quicker. That's everything for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Teal. I appreciate that. Look, thank you. And if there's any comfort in the committee can offer you in terms of what we're yes, I'll come to that, Joel. Thank you. What we're doing. Just in terms of our track record as a committee, in 2023 we did an extensive piece of work on food security in Australia, which was really well received by industry and many organisations across the country. And the recommendations from that report, whilst they haven't been formally responded to by government yet, a number of recommendations from that report. And I'll give you one live example. We recommended the establishment of a National Food Council looking at food security, and that Food Council has been stood up and has met in direct response to what's happened in the Middle East. So I think that this committee has got some track record wins in terms of when we write reports and make recommendations that we have managed to get some of our work progressed to the policy and legislative frameworks that were required. So, you know, I'm hoping that we'll get some wins out of this one as well. But look, thank you. Thank you for your attendance today. I don't think you've been asked to provide any additional information, so we don't need to worry about that. You will be sent a copy of your transcript and given the opportunity to request any corrections to transcription errors. But I do thank you, and I'll suspend proceedings until, actually, I think we're going to suspend until 10:45. Thanks very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Broadcast. I now welcome representatives of the Australian Strategic Minerals Organisation to give evidence today. Would you, for the Hansard record, please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
So my name is Annalise Eames and I appear today on behalf of Australian Strategic Materials Limited.
Thank you so much. What is your capacity within the firm, please, Ms Eames?
I am the Chief Legal and External Affairs Officer and Company Secretary.
Thank you so much. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise you that this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament and therefore has the same standings as proceedings of the House. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. And just before I give you the opportunity of making an opening statement, I'd like to give the committee the opportunity of introducing ourselves to you. So I'm Meryl Swanson, Committee Chair and Member for Paterson, which is broadly in the New South Wales Hunter region. My Deputy, Mr Chaffey.
Yeah, Jamie Chaffey, Federal Member for Parks and Deputy Chair of the committee.
Matt Burnell, Federal Member for Spence, Northern Suburbs of Adelaide.
And Miss Amber Habahar, I'm not sure if we still have you online. Yeah, lovely, thank you.
Yes, I'm here, Chair. Thanks. It's Ash Amber Habahar, the Federal Member for Barton, which is just under Sydney Airport. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd now like to invite you to make an opening statement. Thank you.
So good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to ASM's submission to the inquiry into factors shaping social licence and economic development outcomes in critical minerals projects across Australia. ASM is developing the Dubbo project, a long-life rare earth and critical minerals project located in Toongai. Once developed, the Dubbo project will supply the critical minerals essential to the global energy transition, advanced manufacturing, defence capability and resilient allied supply chains. At the centre of our submission is a simple proposition. Critical minerals projects will only succeed in Australia if they are economically sustainable, environmentally responsible and supported by the communities in which they operate. For us, social licence is not a communications exercise or a box-ticking process. It is built through long-term relationships, transparency and consistent engagement. Over more than 2 decades, we have worked closely with local stakeholders in the Dubbo region, including community groups, local government, traditional owners and Aboriginal organisations connected to the project area. We recognise that meaningful engagement with communities and stakeholders must occur early and continue throughout the project lifecycle, respect cultural heritage, land rights and the principles of free and prior and informed consent. The Dubbo Project Community Consultative Committee has provided an important forum for open dialogue between us, the local community and government representatives. Indigenous representatives on that committee have played and will continue to play an important role in ensuring culturally informed decision making and helping shape project planning and community engagement. ASM has also sought to contribute positively to the local community through practical initiatives, including support for STEM education, agricultural pathways programs for students, and local community events. These initiatives are important because projects like ours must create benefits that extend beyond the mine and endure beyond the life of operations. The Dubbo project has significant strategic and economic importance. Australia has a major opportunity to become a reliable and trusted supplier of ethically sourced critical minerals at a time when global supply chains, particularly for rare earths, remain heavily concentrated in China. Projects like the Dubbo project can help diversify those supply chains, strengthen Australia's relationships with key allies and trading partners, and support downstream processing and advanced manufacturing capability domestically. Importantly, regional communities must share in these benefits. The Dubbo project is expected to create substantial employment opportunities both during construction and operations, including for engineers, metallurgists, tradespeople, operators, trainees and apprentices. ASM is committed to prioritising local workers and local businesses wherever possible, including Aboriginal business participation. However, achieving a developed project that can deliver these outcomes requires strong government partnership and coordination. Critical minerals projects are infrastructure intensive and capital intensive. Access to roads, rail, ports, power and water infrastructure is essential. Delays, duplication and uncertainty across planning and environmental approvals can materially impact investment decisions and project timelines. ASM welcomes the efforts already undertaken by both the state and federal governments, including the critical minerals tax production incentive, the state royalty deferral initiatives, and other grant funding that has been essential to progress technical studies. These measures have already had a tangible impact in supporting our project, but more can always be done. In our view, Australia would benefit from greater coordination between the Commonwealth and state approval regimes, clearer and more streamlined regulatory pathways, investment in common user infrastructure in strategic regional areas, stronger workforce and STEM development initiatives, and support for downstream processing, refining and recycling capability. Australia has the geological resources, the technical expertise and strategic partnerships to become a global leader in critical minerals. But success will depend on building projects that communities support, investors can finance and governments can help enable efficiently and responsibly. We remain committed to working collaboratively with all levels of government, local communities and stakeholders to ensure that our project delivers long-term economic, strategic and social value for regional New South Wales and for Australia more broadly. I thank you and I welcome any questions from the committee.
Thank you very much, Ms Eames, and not only for your remarks this morning, but your excellent submission. So just getting back to basics in terms of ASM, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are as a company and for the benefit of those listening to the broadcast today? And so can we just start there, and also what you are going to extract here in Dubbo and then what will happen to it after that? I know you've put it in your submission, but I just think it's worthwhile retracing some of that information as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So ASM, we are an emerging vertically integrated critical minerals producer. So we have a mine to metal strategy. So that commences with our mine, with our project here in Dubbo, which is a very strategically important multi-commodity resource that has rare earths, both light and heavy, so dysprosium, praseodymium, terbium, and Nd, neodymium. And then also a couple of other critical minerals, zirconium, niobium and hafnium as well. So the intent there has been to develop that project that it will take that all the way to an oxide. And that's fantastic. That's sort of solves a great part of the supply chain problem. But the further downstream you go, the even more constrained and more dominant is China's position. So the next step being the metallisation, the alloying, is 90% dominated by China. So we went, well, why don't we go a step further? So we have our metals facility in South Korea that takes the oxides and then converts them to a metal and alloy, specifically an NdFeB alloy, which becomes the input into high-performance magnets. And it's those high-performance magnets that are used primarily in EV drive motors, and then also in other applications like wind turbines, and then have other applications in defence capability as well.
And so the process from Korea then, does that go to America from there? Or so I'm just interested in how we get along the stages of product development or refinement, if you like.
Yeah, so the key thing is the Korean operations are up and running and in production and commercially operating. It has customers globally, but primarily the first sort of cornerstone customers from the Korean metals plant were American magnet makers. There are also, we supply to European magnet makers and also to South Korean magnet makers. So the intent is we will only supply to allied nations, and primarily US, Europe and South Korea and Japan. We haven't got any Japanese customers yet because they have their own capability there. But they then go to those magnet makers who then work closely with the tier one suppliers into the automotive industry and other industries as well.
So I suppose what I'm getting at there is you are a prime example of how we can take extraction from here in Dubbo all the way through to an end point that might end up in a mobile phone or you know, an EV or something back in Australia. But we've been able to gain more value than just the extraction alone. And you're saying that ASM, you know, it's mine to metal, and I think that aligns with the government's strategy of trying to get more value added into these rare earths and critical minerals that we have in abundance, but how do we actually get more value from them?
And absolutely, and I think it's something that the industry and government needs to think about is that we're not just creating mines, we are actually trying to create an entire industry at the same time. Because we could create the mines, and which would sort of revert us to a model that Australia is quite familiar with, to supply the raw materials into a developed industry in China. But I think it's important that, particularly in areas like this, where there's such dominance and also such critical uses, that we develop each step of the way. And having that sort of diversified supply chain is incredibly important, which is what we've done. We've been doing. And also, I think as key is the partnership element as well. I don't think this is something that one country, one company can do. I think it requires collaboration across various jurisdictions and various parts of the supply chain.
And I think that you're also a classic example of this. You've just said that you've been already working on this for 2 decades. Is that correct?
That's correct. With the Dubbo project, so that's for 2 decades. So in various sort of iterations of how we've been doing it. The metals plant, we constructed that started construction in 2020. But again, there was, you know, quite a few years before that of investigation and partnership in South Korea as well. So it has been a long process, and you know, there's various reasons for that, including, you know, the macroeconomic factors and the demand for the various products. But it's something that we bring already a lot of knowledge and background to.
So, is there opportunity for what you're doing in Korea to be done here in Australia? Is that, as you say, just part of that macroeconomic? That's where the customers are. How do we? I suppose my question goes to, how do we gain even more of that value here in Australia?
So, I mean, I think the reason we've looked to establish in South Korea was a couple of reasons. So, primarily, you're absolutely right. Having that sort of end point in the processing close to the end users makes a lot of sense. So if you look where the automotive industries are, that is where the tier one suppliers are, and then their suppliers are. So South Korea makes a lot of sense. Our other customers in the US and the EU also make a lot of sense as well. So they, and the reason for that is that there is, the further downstream you go, the more technical it gets, and things become very specific to the customer specification and recipe. There's a lot of intellectual property in there. There's a need to be physically close so you can work closely, but also to mitigate the risks of, you know, losing that important intellectual property. So I do think that, you know, when people ask, could we do what we're doing in South Korea in Australia, I think it's problematic that there's no end automotive industry still anymore, or a sort of a well-established one. I think that's a difficulty. The other driving factor that took us to South Korea was the technical expertise and know-how in that field. And again, I think that's developed because of where the end parts of the industry have developed as well.
It is a great shame we lost the automotive industry in Australia. However, that is not for
No.
we can't change that now. But yes, I understand the point. So I'll defer to other members of the committee in just a moment. But in terms of building social licence, you've been working on this project for 2 decades now. You've set up the consultative committee here with your community. In that time, what have you heard from the community? And over 20 years, these are, you know, we talk about standing projects up quickly, but it's taken, why has it taken 20 years is what I'm trying to get to. And what have you heard from the community is, you know, yeah, I suppose that's an obvious question. But
So I'll start with why it's taken so long, and probably the short and simple but somewhat trite answer is funding. So I think I mentioned in our submission these projects are capital intensive. They are extremely capital intensive. This is, to really develop this properly, it's to call it a mining project is actually incorrect. It is much more about processing, and that requires, you know, a lot of money, a lot of technical expertise that goes into it. So funding, you know, obviously there's a raft of funding options, you know, equity and debt. There's so the quantum we need to raise is large, but it's also the risk factors in how we're raising it, and we're raising it for commodities that don't have a established market. So if I was financing a gold project, my banks would say to me, hedge X% of your future product, and I'd be able to hedge it. There's no way I can go and hedge a rare earth market. The banks will say to me, well, now you need to have long-term offtakes for it at a certain price. And we're trying to do that in a market at the moment where the market prices are set by China. It's not transparent. It's highly likely to be manipulated. And, you know, there's a fair amount of risk in that. So it certainly has, I can see the green shoots of it getting better, and I think that has been a result of a number of factors. One, you know, in recent years, the geopolitical environment has made this risk a lot more real. Therefore, private investors are starting to see the benefits of that, but also I think we've seen the benefit of some really fantastic combined allied government coordination through it. And, you know, I think we've got an example of how it has been done well, which is with Lynas. They essentially had the benefit of, you know, some very key government-private coordination resulting from the last time China sort of tightened the tap on rare earth supply in the early 2010s with Japan. And, you know, that Japanese investment support gave, you know, it wasn't an easy ride for Lynas. No one is going to tell you otherwise. But now, look at them, they're well established. So there is the blueprint. It can be done again. So I think, you know, that's primarily the reason. It's funding. As I said, you know, I think there's pathways through it. I think coordination across the industry is going to be really important. In terms of what the community has said, the community is really, I'd say as a whole, supportive of the project. They see the benefits that the project will deliver to the region, primarily in jobs, but also in skilled work paths. And when I say jobs, there's obviously the jobs that will be a direct result of the project, the direct hires, but there are also the jobs resulting from the businesses that will need to service the project and the businesses that will grow as a result of that. I think it's probably fair to say the community it has been a long journey. There is probably some doubts as to, you know, I think that's probably the most common question we get asked is, when is it going to be developed? Why hasn't it been developed yet? That's, you know, it's not a hard question to answer, but it's, you know, it's hard to keep saying it will one day, we're working hard, you know, without sort of trying to sound like you're just a broken record. But as I said, again, it's just that those relationships are a part of consistent, transparent, honest feedback engagement.
Very, very good. No, thank you for that. Did you want to continue on, Mr. Chaffey?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your submission and for attending today. Before we get into the social licence regional development component of that, if I could just ask if you could maybe expand a little about your comment in your opening remarks about planning and state and federal governments, the way that the current system works or isn't working when it comes on a proponent side about the ability to get a project forward.
So we are actually in a fortunate position in that we have all of our major approvals in place, so both at a state and a federal level, and we've applied for a modification and the state government for our state development consent, and we've received that, and to the extent we revise how we're going to run the project, we will likely need to do more approvals. We also have our federal approvals under the EPBC. So, you know, from our perspective, we are grateful that we're able to say we've got all major approvals in place. What I would say is that, you know, again, that hasn't been in, that was it's easy now to say we've got it. There was a lot of work and a lot of time that went into that, and that is part of the 2 decades that went through. So I think as a general comment, and I think no doubt other people have said that, a speedier process is essential and a coordinated project is essential. I know in my background of having done other projects, you often feel like you're submitting the same information to various different parties over and over again. So coordination is key. I think the other is certainty as well. You know, investors, financiers want to know that once a company like ours has those approvals in place, they are in place, they won't be challenged, there won't be a change. So again, you know, having coordination between the 2 levels, state and federal, to say if we've done the work in terms of engagement with local owners, traditional owners, to, you know, do cultural heritage and various other things, that then is informative if there is a federal process that comes in over the top, I think is really important as well.
In your submission, you talked about major new and upgraded infrastructure around access to port, rail, road infrastructure, local roads, housing for community workforce,
Yep.
and that there would need, for this infrastructure to be developed, it's vital that there are all tiers of government working together with a proponent. Would you like to expand that at all, or give any of your thoughts on particularly the Commonwealth requirements from your perspective that would be very supportive of the project to move forward in a timely manner?
Yeah, so I think some of the practical examples that we have is that in various iterations of our project, we will need to utilise rail to transport in key supplies. And I think, you know, making sure that there is, you know, at some points it's state-based, at some points it's federal, so the ports are where we sort of interact on a federal level. I think having that support to ensure that, to the extent that there are planning decisions made with those infrastructure key parts that we were planning on using, that there is consultation with us before there are decisions made. So this is a state level example, but the rail in Dubbo, they did build a switch centre in the middle of it, which then disrupted our access to it. So we're now having to engage with them. To the extent I know that it's not the federal government's sort of remit, that the support can be had to sort of encourage that there is some thought about the impacts that these decisions can have on projects like ours. And I also think, you know, more broadly than perhaps a project like ours, which might not be so heavily reliant on it, but setting up infrastructure that enables success for more than one project is going to be key. So I look at examples from my home state in Western Australia where you might have 3 identical railway lines, you know, having something that is transformative that enables these more remote projects to have that access will be very supportive, and the funding for it, because that can often be another hurdle, another capital intensive element to fund.
So you're suggesting the Commonwealth should play a part in that funding model?
Yep. Particularly when it's, you know, cross borders and it has such importance for matters of critical national security and, you know, export and etc.
Thank you.
Mr. Burnell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for providing evidence today. I just wanted to touch on some comments made in the opening statement around free, prior and informed consent with First Nations people. I'm just interested to get an understanding of what that looked like. Did that include the right to veto for First Nations people if consent wasn't achieved? Or, I'd like to get a bit more of a sense of what that process looked like, I guess.
Yeah, so for us, it was very important that one of the areas that it really touched on was the sites of cultural significance. So what we committed to doing was working with the traditional owners to understand where the sites were of cultural significance on our site, which we'll be very delighted to show you in the site visit following this hearing. So once we identified those with in collaboration with the traditional owners, we then changed, or we ensured that how we looked to develop our project didn't impact on those. So to the extent maybe it's not quite right as a veto, I think there's a way of working together that preserves what is important to them, but allows the project to continue as well. So that's probably the main significant sort of interaction that we've had with our project.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to touch on in your submission. So you clearly do a lot of work with our educational institutions within the community here, providing pathways through STEM and agricultural pathways program. But you also mentioned about the need for enhanced assistance within the TAFE framework and more advanced educational diplomas, etc. What would you like to see specifically from the vet and higher education pathway to be provided here in the local community to better assist projects like yours?
So I think specifically are the skills that will be required. So, things like electrical engineering, metals work, and those that are in advanced manufacturing. I think the other key, so that's sort of more in the vet space. In terms of higher education, I think what's of real concern to us is the diminishing numbers of enrolments across STEM subjects, and specifically mining, engineering, geology, things like that. I heard a stat, it's a US stat, that last year in the US they graduated 37,000 lawyers and only 300 mining engineers. It's similar stats in Australia, that you're actually seeing universities shut down their mining engineering departments, shut down their geology departments. And, for me personally, it's ironic because I don't come from those backgrounds, but I think if we do want to capitalise on our natural resource endowment, but also develop that further skill, there needs to be an encouragement into those subject matters and continued support for the universities to provide those. So there's there's the universities, the TAFEs continuing to have those courses, but there's also a grassroots campaign to encourage young people to go, this is actually an exciting career to have.
So just on that and encouraging young people to pursue STEM, how successful has the Western Plains Science and Engineering Challenge been for you?
I think it's been really good. I think it's it's hard to say yet as to whether or not it's converted into, because it's been relatively recent that we've been engaging in that. So I think it's only about, I'm not entirely sure if it's year 3 or year 4. So I don't think we've had enough of the pathway, but we can sort of see, it's been really positive to hear the stories of, the kids going, this is fun. I didn't understand how, what this actually meant, what the pathways are. So I think more things like that are really important. And we will continue to do that, but I would also encourage the federal government to sort of do an education campaign nationally to say, this is what a career in STEM can provide you. It can provide you travel, it can provide you with a raft of options of where your career goes. You're working to solve the real big issues facing the world.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are looking forward to coming out and having a site visit and seeing it firsthand. Look, is there anything, Ms. Eames, before we conclude for today, that we haven't asked you or you'd like to share with us that you think is, you know, of high priority that the committee knows about? Of course, your submission's excellent. Your evidence today has been exemplary. But is there anything that, you know, we failed to ask you or you think that...
No, I think it's been a really interesting conversation and a thorough one. And I thank the committee for not just the inquiry, but the very thorough way that you've reviewed the submissions and are considering the subject matter. So I just thank the committee for its continued efforts.
Thank you so much. And I can only but wonder who was the forward-looking person, or sort of almost prescient, I suppose, that 20 years ago, when certainly many of these technologies would have been nascent, you know, thought to come up with your project. So, and here we are 20 years down the track.
Yeah.
But I hazard to say that I really hope it's not another 20 years, because I don't think we are afforded the luxury of that much time before you are extracting and you know, doing the things that you want to be doing to progress.
Yeah. I don't even allow my mind to think about that.
No. And look, to be quite frank with you, as a country and a world, we don't have time for that luxury either.
Yeah.
So
good to hear.
it doesn't mean that we don't have to do it well.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, can I just, to the best of your knowledge, so Charles Sturt University has a campus here, is that correct, in Dubbo?
That is correct. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Pretty sure, yes.
And do they provide any pathways currently within the mining engineering sector or not?
I can't answer that definitively. Quite a few years ago, I had a meeting with them, and they did provide some, and they were very interested in providing some more. So it's certainly something that we will continue to explore as we get closer.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Look, thank you for your attendance today, and you'll be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence and have an opportunity to request any corrections to transcription errors. But look, thank you. We're looking forward to coming out to Toongai for the site visit, and I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.